Hi everyone, welcome to chapter 3, How to Recognise a Witch. The next evening, after my grandmother had given me my bath, she took me once again into the living room for another story. Tonight, the old woman said, I'm going to tell you how to recognise a witch when you see one. Can you always be sure? I asked. No, she said, you can't, and that's the trouble. You can make a pretty good guess. She was dropping cigar ash all over her lap, and I hoped she wasn't going to catch fire before she told me how to recognise one. In the first place, she said, a real witch is certain always to be wearing gloves when you meet her. Surely not always, I said. What about in the summer when it's hot? Even in the summer, my grandmother said. She has to. Do you want to know why? Why? I said. She doesn't have fingernails. Instead of fingernails, she has thin, curvy claws like a cat. She wears the gloves to hide them. Mind you, lots of very respectable women wear gloves, especially in winter. So that one doesn't help you very much. Mama used to wear gloves, I said. Not in the house though, my grandmother said. Witches wear them even in the house. They only take them off when they go to bed. How do you know all this, Grandmama? Don't interrupt me, she said. Just take it all in. The second thing you have to remember is a real witch is always bald. Bald? I said. As bald as a boiled egg, my grandmother said. I was shocked. There was something indecent about a bald woman. Why are they bald, Grandmama? Don't ask me why, she snapped. But you can take it from me, not a single hair grows on a witch's head. Ooh, how horrid. Disgusting, my grandmother said. If she's bald, she'll be really easy to spot, I said. No, not at all. A real witch always wears a wig to hide her baldness. She wears a first-class wig. It's almost impossible to tell, really, a first-class wig from ordinary hair, unless you give it a pull to see if it comes off. Then that's what I'll have to do, then, I said. Don't be foolish, my grandmother said. You can't go around pulling at the hair of every lady you meet, even if she is wearing gloves. You just have to see what happens. That doesn't help either then, I said. None of these things are any good on their own, my grandmother said. It's when you put them all together that they begin to make a little sense. Mind you, those wigs do cause a rather serious problem for witches. What problem's that, Grandmama? Well, they make the scalp itch most terribly, she said. You see, when an actress wears a wig, or if you and I wear a wig, we'll be putting it on over our own hair, but a witch has to put it straight onto her naked scalp. And the underneath of a wig is always very rough and scratchy. It sets up a frightful itch on bald skin. It causes nasty sores on the head. Wig rash, the witches call it. It doesn't half itch. What other things must I look for when I recognise a witch, I asked. Look for the nose holes, my grandmother said. Witches have slightly larger nose holes than ordinary people, and the rim of each is pink and curvy, like the rim of a seashell. Why do they have such big nose holes, I asked. For smelling with, my grandmother said. A real witch has the most amazing power of smell. She can actually smell a child who's standing on the other side of the street in a pitch black night. She couldn't smell me, I said. I've just had a bath. Oh, yes, she could, my grandmother said. Cleaner you happen to be, the more smelly you are to a witch. That can't be true, I said. An absolutely clean child gives off the most ghastly stench to a witch, my grandmother said. The dirtier you are, less you smell. But that doesn't make sense, Grandmama. Oh, yes, it does. It isn't the dirt that the witch is smelling. It's you. The smell that drives a witch mad comes right out of your wind skin. Comes oozing in waves, and these waves, stink waves, the witches call them, go floating through the air and hit the witch right smack in her nose. They send her reeling. Hang on a minute, Grandmama. Don't interrupt me, she said. The point is this. When you haven't washed for a week and your skin is all covered with dirt, then quite obviously the stink waves can't come oozing out as strongly. I'll never have a bath again, I said. Just don't have one too often, my grandmother said. Once a month, quite enough for a sensible child. It was moments like these that I loved my grandma more than ever. Grandmama, I said, if it's a dark night, how can a witch smell the difference between a child and a grown-up? Because grown-ups don't give out stink waves, she said. Only children do. But I don't really give out stink waves, do I? I asked. Am I giving them out this moment? Not to me, you aren't, my grandmother said. To me, you smell like raspberries and cream, but to a witch, you would smell absolutely disgusting. And what would I smell of? I asked her. Dog's droppings, my grandmother said. I reeled. I was stunned. Dog's droppings? I cried. I'm not smelling a dog's droppings. I don't believe it. I won't believe it. And what's more, my grandmother said, to a witch, you'd smell of fresh dog's droppings. That simply cannot be true, I cried. I know I don't smell of dog's droppings, stale or fresh. There's no point in arguing about it, she said. It's a fact of life. I was outraged. Simply couldn't bring myself to believe what my grandma was telling me. So if you see a woman holding her nose as she passes you on the street, that woman could easily be a witch. I decided to change the subject. Tell me what else to look for, I asked. The eyes, my grandmother said. Look carefully at the eyes, because the eyes of a real witch are different from yours and mine. Look in the middle of each eye. There's normally a little black dot. If she's a witch, the black dot will keep changing colour. You'll see fire and you'll see ice right in the very centre of the coloured dot. It'll send shivers all over your skin. My grandmother leant back in her chair and sucked away on her foul black cigar. I squatted on the floor, staring up at her fascinated. She was not smiling. She was deadly serious. And are there other things? I asked. Of course there are other things, my grandmother said. You don't seem to understand that witches aren't actually women at all. They look like them, talk like them, able to act like them. But in actual fact, they're a totally different animal. They're demons in human shape. That's why they have claws, bald heads, strange noses, peculiar eyes, all of which are to hide the best they can from the real world. What else is different about them, Grandmama? The feet, she said. Witches have no toes. No toes? I cried. What do they have then? They just have feet, my grandmother said. Feet with square ends, no toes on them at all. Does that make it difficult to walk? I asked. No, not at all, my grandmother said. It does give them a problem with their shoes. All ladies like to wear small, rather pointed shoes, but a witch whose feet are wide and square at the ends has the most awful job of squeezing her feet into those neat pointed shoes. Why doesn't she wear wide comfy ones with square ends? I asked. Well, she dare not, my grandmother said. Just as she hides her baldness with a wig, she must hide her ugly witch's feet by squeezing them into pretty shoes. Isn't that terribly uncomfortable? I said. Extremely uncomfortable, my grandmother said. She's got to put up with it though. If she's wearing ordinary shoes, it won't help me to recognise her then, will it, Grandmama? I'm afraid it won't, my grandmother said. You might possibly see her limping very slightly, but only if you're watching closely. And those are the only differences then? Well, there's one more, my grandmother said. Just one more. What is it, Grandmama? Their spit is blue. Blue? I cried. Not blue. It can't be blue. Blue as a bilberry, she said. You don't mean it, Grandmama. Nobody can have blue spit. Witches can, she said. Is it like ink? I asked her. Exactly. They even use it to write with. Use those old-fashioned pens, that have nibs and you lick the nib. Can you notice the blue spit? If a witch was talking to me, would I be able to see it? Only if you looked really carefully, my grandmother said. If you look very carefully, you'll probably see a slight bluish tinge on her teeth. It doesn't show that much, though. It would if she spat, I said. Witches never spit, my grandmother said. They daren't. I couldn't believe my grandmother would be lying to me. She went to church every morning of the week, and she said grace before every meal. And somebody who did those kinds of things never told lies. I was beginning to believe every word she spoke. So there you are, my grandmother said. That's about all I can tell you. None of it very helpful. You can never be absolutely sure whether a woman is a witch or not just by looking at her. But if she's wearing the gloves, if she has large nose holes, the queer eyes and the hair that looks as though it might be a wig, and if she has the bluish tinge to her teeth, if she has all of these things, then you run like mad. Grandmama, I said, when you were a little girl, did you ever meet a witch? Once, my grandma said. Only once. What happened? I'm not going to tell you, she said. It would frighten you out of your skin and it would give you bad dreams. Please tell me, I begged. No, she said. Certain things are just too horrible to talk about. Does it have something to do with your missing thumb? I asked. Suddenly her old wrinkled lips shut tight as a pair of tongs, and the hand that held the cigar, which had no thumb on it, began to quiver very slightly. I waited, but she didn't look at me. She didn't even speak. All of a sudden, she'd shut herself off completely, and the conversation was finished. Good night, Grandmama, I said, rising from the floor and kissing her cheek. She didn't move, and I crept out of the room and went back to my bed. See you tomorrow for the next chapter, which is The Grand High Witch. Bye.